participation. Voting allows the citizens to participate in the democratic process, ensuring that our voices are heard and that our preferences are considered in governance. Point number 2, representation. It helps in electing representatives who reflect the values and interests of the electorate, leading to more responsive and accountable governance. Third point is policy influence. The voters can influence public policy and the direction of government actions by choosing candidates whose platforms align with our views. At this time, I'm going to turn it over to the hands of Alderperson Kenny Harper for
Good afternoon, everybody. And like everybody else said, I am very excited to be here. Because I got a chance to, to introduce our wonderful guest today, but not only because he's our guest, because as I was going through his bio, I started to think about all of the things that reminded me of myself, right? Not only do we have the same haircut, which we feel good about it. I can say that I got it by a couple of months, even though he looks a lot younger than me. But when I started to study this man and really understand the person that he was, I realized that he's a father. He's an entrepreneur. He's a leader. And most of all, he looks like us, right? He's what we represent in Kenosha. He's hardworking, he's dedicated, a man of integrity, and somebody we need in office. Right. So even though he's not the governor of Wisconsin, which I'm not disappointed about our governor at all, but if you ever want to move to Wisconsin, you come on. But this guy that I stand alongside, even though we just met a few minutes ago, I'm happy to say that he aligns with everything that I align with. Right? Family values, good morals, and a strong system of urgency for what we need in our government. I can stand up here talking for hours and hours, but I'm not going to do that anymore. I'm going to give the floor to the man who you all came to see. Wes Moore.
Thank you so much. How y'all doing? All right. Let me tell you something. We spent the weekend in Wisconsin. So we spent the weekend over in Madison. We were in Milwaukee. But I gotta tell you, coming to hang out here in Kenosha, coming out here and hang out with folks that are singing, I've been looking forward to this all weekend long. Alderwoman, and Kenny, thank you so much. God bless you. And thank you for your leadership. You know, I can tell you, I'm new to politics. I've been an elected official for 18 months. I'll tell you that in a second. But just seeing the commitment for people who are willing to raise their hand and get in this arena. It's tricky, it's complicated, the sacrifice is real, but so is the impact that y'all are making. So I just want to say thank you so much for the leadership and everything you continue to show to each and every one of us. So bless you. Thank you. I just want to say God bless you. God bless you. Because you define public service. What it means to give of oneself for a greater good. And I'm telling you right now, the thing that I'm loving about what I'm seeing, what I see from you, what I see from each and every one of you, is I think this is a room full of people who understand what's at stake. And who understand that we have a unique opportunity right now to actually build a country that those who came before us will for. That they deserve. And it matters that we aren't just participants. It matters that we are active active participants, and we understand that the whole idea of democracy and our involvement doesn't just go with election day.
Right.
It's the 127 days that we have until election day. And, you know, and I'm grateful, as you know, this night. And everyone's like, you know, why is the governor of Maryland in Wisconsin? Because this stuff matters. It matters to all of us. And I tell you, I'm standing in front of you as probably the most improbable governor in this country. Real talk, like when I first, you know, I don't come from a political background, I don't come from a political family. You know, I had to convince members of my family to vote for me. And it's not because my family and I are cool, like my family and I are cool. It's just that I had to convince them to vote. You know? Because that's not our background. And so, you know, and I say that I don't come from a family that is used to making the policies. Frankly, I come from a family that's used to suffering the consequences of it. Right? I come from a family where the first memories that I have was watching my father die in front of me because he didn't get the health care he needed. Some of the first memories I have was when I watched my mother not get her first job that gave her benefits until I was 14 years old. First job that allowed her to work one job instead of multiple jobs. She got when I was 14. That I had handcuffs on my wrist by the time I was 11. Because I came up in communities that were over-policed to me. I joined the Army when I was 17 years old. You know, I was saying I wasn't old enough to sign the paperwork. My mother signed the paperwork for me. But after my teenage years, my mother would sign whatever paperwork the Army did. You know, I graduated from a 2-year college. I'm now serving as the first black governor in the history of my state. And the thing, when I think about when we first came on board, I said, you know what? I don't come from a place nor a system that in many ways I felt was built for us. So I have no problem coming in and saying, now what can we do to make sure that we can build a system that sees all of us? And so I can tell you in the first 18 months as governor, we just decided to move different and unapologetic. We decided to move intentional and unapologetic. And when people said things like, well, you know, how are you going to address public safety? And, you know, are you going to support law enforcement or are you going to support community? And I said, I don't know, we have to choose.
Correct. That's it.
We can make record investments in law enforcement and technology and predictive analytics, and at the same time, making sure we're making record investments in our neighborhoods. Making sure that our children are growing up, they don't have to be employees, they can also be employers.
Come on.
Knowing that we're going to invest in violence interruption programs and actually making sure that the people who are closest to the challenge are the ones who are closest to the solutions. They're just hardly ever at the table. So we're going to invest to make sure that we can build a big enough table that they are actually at the table. That now in our first 18 months, despite the fact that Maryland went 8 straight years where we watched the homicide rate nearly double over an 8-year period before we came on board. In just the 18 months that we've been on board now, the homicide rates and the non-fatal shooting rates in the state of Maryland have plummeted. Baltimore City now is having the most precipitous drops in homicides of any major city in America. The last time the homicide rates in Baltimore were this low, I was not born yet. And when people are talking about, well, how are you going to build out an economy that sees everybody? I said, no. And so are you going to invest in businesses or are you going to invest in workers? I said, we're not choosing. And we're going to make sure we're providing capital to our entrepreneurs and our small businesses, making historic investments in procurement adjustments and also procurement policy, making sure that our minority-owned businesses and our black-owned businesses are getting the capital that they need to grow and thrive, making sure we're making permitting and regulatory reform to help our businesses to be able to choose Maryland, stay in Maryland, and making sure that we're giving our workers a raise and raising the minimum wage because people who are working jobs, in some cases multiple jobs, and still living at or below a poverty line. And what's been the result? When we were first inaugurated, Maryland was ranked 43rd in unemployment in the country. Now, we're going on 12 straight months where Maryland has one of the lowest unemployment rates in the entire country. And people said, well, how are you going to make sure that you have an economy that grows and supports everybody? We said, well, we're going to do things like making Maryland the first state in the country that now has a service year option for all of our high school graduates. And we're going to make sure we're doing things like, if we now have a recreational cannabis market in the state of Maryland, which we do, which they voted for, 70% of our state voted to have a recreational cannabis market in the state of Maryland. And I said, we can make sure we can have an equitable rollout. We can make sure we have the smoothest rollout for cannabis in this country. But we are never going to celebrate the benefits of legalization if we do not deal with the consequences of criminalization. Now, 2 weeks ago, I signed the largest mass pardon for cannabis convictions in the history of Pennsylvania. Progress does not happen by accident. Partnership produces progress. And nothing else. And so the reason that the governor of Maryland is in Wisconsin right now is because I know who I need as my partner. The work that President Biden and Vice President Harris have been doing for 3.5 years is not just important, it has been game-changing for our country. And when we look at a chance now that coming in just 3.5 years of them being in office, that we've been able to drive to the lowest unemployment rate in the entire country, that we have seen the fastest growth in black-owned businesses, specifically by black men, that we have seen in 30 years. That since COVID began, that under the Biden-Harris administration, that we've been able to increase black wealth by 16%. Because if we're not, it's not just work and wages. If we are not talking about wealth, I don't know what it is that we're talking about. And by making sure that we have an administration right now who sees us, who invests in us, and who keeps their word.
Yes, yes.
Now I want to close. I want to tell you all a quick story. You know, one thing I've realized in this job is that when my phone rings in the middle of the night, I'm never about to get good news. Good news always waits until the morning. Whenever I'm awoken in the middle of the night, I know I'm about to hear news that's about to change my entire life. And that happened about 3 months ago. When at 2:02 in the morning, my phone rang, my chief of staff let me know that a ship that was the size of 3 football fields, that was so heavy, you know, it was a container ship, so it brings containers from port to port. Right? Each one of those containers is about 1.5 to 2.5 tons. That ship, the Dolly, had 4,000 containers on it. That's how big this ship was. And how it slammed into one of the most iconic bridges inside of our state, how the Port of Baltimore, which is responsible for 13% of our economy, was now shut down. That we had tens of thousands of tons of steel that was now sitting at the bottom of the Patapsco River, mangled. That we had a port that was closed, that, by the way, tens of thousands of workers worked at that port. That a bridge that had around 40,000 people who crossed it every single day was now gone. And by the way, they also let me know that we had 6 bodies that were unaccounted for. And as I'm sitting there appalling and I'm mobilizing, we got the Maryland State Police, we got our divers in the water within an hour to try to save lives. The Maryland Transportation Police that were on the bridge. And I cannot say enough how important they have been because they saved countless lives that night. And we were trying to figure out what we're going to do with the fact that there are thousands of workers who now are about to wake up in a few hours and realize they do not have a job. And we're sitting there, we're mobilizing, we're moving things around, we're trying to make calls and trying to make sure that everybody is on task and on mission. My first phone call from the White House came at 3:30 that morning. And at a time when my job is to look at my state and to give them a sense of calm, to give them a sense of certainty. I cannot stress enough that from the very beginning of this, that's exactly what the President of the United States gave me. When the President of the United States says to me, he says, "Gov, we're going to be with you every step of the way." And he meant it. And that's when I told the people of our state that we are going to give closure to these families. And it took 5 weeks, but we were able to find all the remains of the 6 individuals, the 6 Marylanders who we lost, and be able to give their families a sense of closure that they needed and they deserved. At a time when people were concerned about what the unemployment rate was going to be for the state of Maryland in April, because there's like tens of thousands of jobs, people who no longer had jobs, and we said we're going to work together with the private sector, and the private sector committed they would not lay people off. We made sure we had the Department of Labor that was working to get people the benefits that they needed and deserved. When people were saying we're unsure what the unemployment rate for Maryland was going to be in April because of that, well, here was the answer. In the month of April, once again, not only did Maryland achieve amongst the lowest unemployment rates in the entire country, during the month of April, Maryland actually gained over 7,000. When we said we need to get that shit reopened, I remember that first morning, it was wild. People told me, they were like, I said, how long is this thing going to take to clear the channel? And they said, well, this could take up to a year. I said, oh, no, it's not. I got thousands of workers. I said, no, it's not. What do we need to do to make you a liar? And we were working 24/7, around the clock, with multiple units and assets. Over 1,000 people were working around the clock. And what they told us was going to take 11 months. We got the Port of Baltimore reopened in 11 weeks. Notice I said we.
That's it.
That's it. I have the partners I need. I have partners who keep their word. Because when the president said, "Oh, we're going to be with you every step of the way," he meant that. Right now, we've got a real choice to make as a country. We've got a real choice to make as to what is it that we hope for our future. How are we willing to invest in our future? This is a president and a vice president who have kept their word to us. It is time that we keep our word to them. And at this time, when I know that there is a tremendous amount of frustration and cynicism, and real talk, I'm not gonna lie, like, it's the sense of cynicism that is not only rational, it's justified. And it's long-standing. Listen, I'm the governor and I'm still cynical. Honestly. Cynicism will always be my companion. Because I know our histories. I know where we've come from. I know the fact that this journey has not been an even one. I know the fact that we still have policies that have not worked for our community because they've intentionally not worked for our community. I know when I became the governor of the state of Maryland, we had an 8-to-1 racial wealth gap in the state of Maryland, and that's not because one group is working 8 times harder. There are policies that allow that to happen. That you can't understand things like the racial wealth gap if you're not going to understand things like the Homestead Act, or the unfair application of the GI Bill, or historic redlining, or the unfair appraisal values in historically redlined areas. We'd be honest about that.
But we also have to be honest about this too. It feels good to have an administration who actually wants to address the structural challenges instead of compounding them. It feels good to have partners who actually believe in giving us a sense of ownership instead of talking about black jobs. It's really good to know that we actually be part of the control. And so my simple ask is this. We got 127 days. We're going to make every one of them count.
Amen.
Because it's not just that the past is watching. So is the future. They're watching how we move in this moment. And I'm going to say, and I'll say this, and it's just the numbers. If we are divided, we can't win. But if we're united, we can't lose. And so I'm going to spend these next months giving it all I've got. Because our children deserve it. And I'm so thankful to be able to have the chance to partner with each and every one of you. Because I'm telling you right now, we are just getting started. Let's go get to work.